Hello and welcome to the Cricket Show. Now, we're recording this at 10 a.m. and I can just see in the corner of my eye an extraordinary game of cricket going on, certainly as spin is concerned in the Test match. And luckily today, Nasser and myself are joined by one of England's best spinners.
Brilliant from Panesar. Monty Panesar. Here he goes. We've got Monty on a roll. Monty Panesar has got 5 wickets.
He enjoys his cricket, plays with a smile on his face. They love Monty Panesar.
How are you, Monty?
Yeah, very well. Thank you for having me on your show.
Now, give us your reflection, give us your assessment of England's spinners in the whole series so far and Sri Lanka as well.
Yeah, well, I think Jack Leach has improved, over time, and he's beginning to get that stock delivery that that as a spinner, that you need when you need to bowl defensively or attackingly. So I think that is now beginning to take place. I think now Jack Leach needs to start taking a bit more ownership. Go to Joe Root, go to Ben Stokes, and tell him this is my game plan. And start, mixing his paces, maybe changing his positions at the crease, halfway through the over. Say to Joe Root, I want to go over the wicket when Virat Kohli's batting. Let's block one side of the, of the area and impose himself a little bit. I think he's a bit timid. He's relying on the likes of the bigger characters in the team, and he's beginning to, make himself into a pivotal figure in that team.
How important, we talk about Dom Bess then and how England look like they've just lost a bit of trust in Dom Bess. Did you ever get to a point in your career where you felt that the captain didn't really have much faith in you? And that must be a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, it is. It's mentally can be tough. I remember an incident, the first Test match at Ahmedabad in 2012, where they played, Samit Patel over me. I always felt that even if I had a good domestic season, I'll be the second spinner on tour. I feel like I still had to prove a point. I wasn't automatic selection on a turning pitch, subcontinent pitches. Swanee and Monty, they play together, and then we build rest of the team. It was never that the case. I was always feeling I had to prove myself. And I hope Dom Bess isn't in that space. I really hope that they look after him, and he's done well. He's taken wickets, probably possibly at times in his first innings, in Sri Lanka, which he would say he was very lucky. He hasn't, bowled the quality overs. But it's about, protecting his confidence and telling him, he's very much part of our setup, because he is taking wickets. He is doing well. He's a feisty character, good little batsman as well. And, his all-round capabilities will help this England team.
So for someone who's been there and done it, Monty, what advice would you give Dom Bess? Getting wickets left out, what would you say to him right now?
I think I would say to him is, he needs to obviously... there's certain areas he needs to work on. Is maybe getting that arm a little bit lower, because that's where the inconsistency comes. But also he needs to figure this out himself, and then tell the coaches, tell the captain, look, this is where my game is at. This is where I feel I can help the team, and they need to know his viewpoints as well, and not just rely on what Jeetan Patel is telling them, or Chris Silverwood. And in my opinion, that's what I think. He has a good stock delivery. Sometimes his arm goes a bit higher when he's under pressure. He forces it, and possibly that front leg when he bowls that follow through ball. It's really aggressive. He thumps it. He'd rather just land a bit softer, so allow his body and his shoulders and hip to rotate and get nice shape on the ball.
Some England fans would say, well, hold on, he's got 17 wickets at 22. So what if he bowls the odd bad ball? But in comparison to Axar Patel and Ravi Ashwin, they aren't bowling bad balls. Where do you reckon we should be with us?
Well, if I ask myself, Dom Bess, the question, why did you bowl 3 consecutive full tosses in the second Test match at Chennai? You should be good enough by now to land the ball, especially a turning pitch. And you can see the frustration with Joe Root. When he came on to bowl in that second Test match, at the back end of that tea session, he was frustrated. He was like bowling, lower, changing his pace. He's a smart cricketer, and he's thinking, why aren't my spinners doing this? Why aren't the likes of, Moeen Ali, Dom Bess? They need to be a bit more proactive in their thinking. They just sort of be very predictable after a while, and they don't really have a plan, B or a C throughout their spell. So that, I think, is something that I think Joe Root is frustrated about.
Monty, right, let's talk about bowling and playing in India. Let's go back to your Test debut. Can you give us any memories from that? Freddie was captain. Were you nervous? How did you see the whole thing panning out?
I just saw myself as being with, 2005 Ashes heroes. This is a great opportunity to get some experience, train with them. I never thought I would be playing on that trip. And then I had a new contract at Northants under Kapil Dev. Was a 2-year contract, and I thought I'd go back and improve myself as a cricketer. I never thought in my wildest dreams that Andrew Flintoff had other ideas. He really backed me, and he thought, I want to play him in the first Test match.
What was it like as a British Asian going out there for your first Test? I know what it was like for me. I had various aunties and uncles just jump out from everywhere and ask for tickets. Did you have that sort of interest, Monty?
Yeah, I did actually. I did. It was actually funny enough. My uncle, my dad's, second youngest, brother. He said there's a Sikh guy in the England team, and his name is Panesar. And he was reading the article. He goes, "Oh, that's actually my nephew," and he didn't realise that I was in England team.
I remember you, Monty, from the days of the academy when we were on that together, and I know just how much you idolised Sachin Tendulkar as well. So the fact that you were playing against Sachin, I mean, did you sort of see him in warm-ups and that and almost go and sort of feel like you just wanted to touch him?
It was a credible feeling for me. It was like, really, I remember when Freddie announced the team, I went straight to my room. I wrote down all my field settings, and I went to Freddie's room. There was Harmy and Freddie and the rest of the guys playing, FIFA. And Freddie sort of saying, what's this? And I guess my field setting for tomorrow, against all the players. I was, so he was laughing, but it was just that kind of surreal moment, really. Is thinking, you just never think in your mind that I would be on the same field as Sachin, Tendulkar ever. I just never thought that would ever happen.
What about this dismissal then? It was just extraordinary. This must have been one of your greatest moments.
Yeah, this was one of my favourite moments ever. I couldn't believe this at all. Tendulkar had my first Test wicket, and celebrating like that. I never celebrated a wicket in my life. That was, I just couldn't believe it.
Did you think the umpire? I mean, nowadays that's pretty much par for the course. That type of dismissal. But actually, when you go back to then, umpires didn't often give things like that, especially if there was a bit of bat and pad involved. So that moment, that must have been absolute elation.
I wasn't going to hold back in my celebrations. I was going to, absorb every moment and enjoy it because, it's the greatness of this guy. I'm against the best in the world. And plus, as Kesey said, I couldn't stop talking about one person during our academy days. And, everyone knows about that. It was just, great moment.
That dismissal there, we've seen quite a few of those in this Test match. We've seen it from Axar Patel, we've seen it from Leach, where they play for the turn and it goes straight on. Is that natural variation, what Axar Patel's been doing and Jack Leach? Or are they meaning for that ball to skid on?
Well, I think from Axar Patel, I think he means to do that. I think the Indian spinners, sometimes they intentionally do it. And at times, there is natural variation. Where I can actually, I've got a cricket board here which I can demonstrate. You have a seam position which is, 9 till 10, and if it hits the seam, then great, it will turn like this. But then sometimes if it hits the leather as it's going in the air, it will skid on, and that's what we call the natural variation. Which I thought yesterday when Jack Leach bowled it, that was beautiful ball, lovely trajectory, nice dip. That's the key. If you get good shape and good dip on the ball, you allow that misjudgment where Pujara was, plumb, and I'm sorry, but he had to go.
What about as well then, things like control? Now, I also remember you as someone who used to just bowl and bowl and bowl. You were of a time like I was, like Nasser was, where you had great players in county cricket as well, great overseas players. So you learn a lot of your trade just in the nets, bowling at the likes of Hayden and Hussey, just ball after ball after ball, never really stopping, bowling through the entire session. Do you then think that that is what spinners have to do?
I think part of spinners is they need to have the appetite to bowl. You know, they want to bowl and they want to improve, and that has to come from a young age where they just, groove that action, because there are times where you're going to bowl, 30, 40 overs in an innings, possibly more than that in the whole match. And you got to have, your body needs to go through that, the whole kind of, the biomechanics of it, the how to bowl long spells. And I remember, bowling to Matthew Hayden before he went to that tour in 2001 and did really well. He used to just sweep every ball. And he wasn't, both Hayden and Hussey, they weren't great players of spin. I used to get them out. I was a young spinner, bowled them out, and Hussey used to say, keep bowling to me, mate, because I'm not a good player of spin. I'm from Perth. We don't get spinners. It's a flat wicket, bouncy wickets, and I used to bowl all day to them. So that sometimes you need the batsman as well to have the appetite to say, right, I want to improve myself. And I was very lucky. And after Hussey, a few years being at Northants, he was a brilliant player of spin, because I remember Nick Cook, he would say to me, Monty, he would drag us out of the nets. That's what would happen. He'll come out of his office after training, and we'll be still there, bowling for a couple of hours and just debating on how many times I got him out or which balls went for six. And then Nick Cook will try and drag us out of the net, because he goes, you guys are just, it's non-stop, and you guys got to rest as well.
We've had Graham Swan on the show, and he said it actually helped him. You and him played on some spinning pitches at Wantage Road, Northampton, but it said it helped him going to Trent Bridge, having to learn his skills on pitches that didn't turn, where you just have to do a holding role. Did you have to do that as well when you got into international cricket, especially in England when it doesn't turn?
Yeah, I think in England, what I found was that my aggressive stock delivery, when I bowled that heavy ball, especially in England, it keeps you on as a keeps you as a bowler, and you can bowl sort of 4 or 5 overs, and then suddenly you get a couple of wickets, or you get LBWs skidding on. There you go. You can have a few more overs. And that's the way I think, in England, spinners in the county game got to do. They've got to find a way of getting them few overs that they can't do early on in the season, and that's what I tried to do. In May, especially, I remember when I played against the West Indies at Lords. I got 6 for at Lords, but it was because I was bowling good, strong stock deliveries and the LBW and a little bit of turn to slip. That's what I was trying to do. And initially, you've got to put pace on the ball when you first come on to bowl, because you've got to give yourself a chance to stay on. If you bowl too slowly, I'm sorry, the captain's going to take you off.
Let me just show you then some of your best then, Monty, because the one thing as well that you had, you could bowl with good pace, as we see here, but you also were able to bowl with good pace and still keep revolutions on the ball and spin it. How?
I think that was to do with my hand position of my, when I was in my tightly, when I was on good form. So that is this hand position. If it's too square like this, then what happens? The parabola just goes straight, the trajectory. If your hand position is slightly like this, going towards gully, then what happens is as the ball, goes, it can drifts and arcs. And I remember Nasser saying, in a nice article saying that at the time he said, I'm the mystery spinner, which obviously I didn't live to his expectations. But he did say that, the ball, what Monty does, he bowls it with pace, he gets the arc and the dip when he's drifting. And he goes, that's what makes him that lethal bowler. And at my best, I remember, even, when I got Tendulkar out, which, that was a perfect delivery in Mumbai. That's what happened. And I remember at the time, Nasser's comments, that ball dips and drifts. It's really important when I'm bowling at my best.
I like the fact that you full name Nasser there as well earlier on. You can keep doing that for the whole show. But that's the thing, Nasser. I mean, you would have watched nearly every single ball that Monty's bowled for England, and it's not really been since him and Swan. There's been nobody really who you would say has the same amount of skill and craft as both of those two. Just look at his stats here.
Well, what I actually loved about Monty was his action. I mean, Bisham Bedi, you think of some of the great left-arm spinners, the sort of natural action of a left-arm spinner Monty had that. So right from the first time you saw Monty Panesar, there he is in his living room with a cricket ball in his hand. That is Monty for you. He was brought up and, played the game to bowl left arm spin. It is an art, is a skill. And I think he's a very natural left arm spinner. Did I see a little caught and bowled in there as well, Monty?
Darren Sammy, so I guess I surprised you all, managed to catch, one of the few ones in my career. But
now, just going back to what Rob said there and what you've said, how did it affect you when suddenly things aren't quite going as well? Shane Warne's comments of Monty hasn't played 20 different test matches. He's played the same test match. Are you thinking, do I have to change? Will I change? When suddenly there doesn't. He spoke about Leach and everyone having to have a plan B. How did you need a plan B?
Yeah, I think for me, I remember speaking to, the late Terry Jenner at Loughborough when that comment came out about Shane Warne. And he said to me, all you got to do is shorten that delivery stride. That's all you got to do. And then the ball will start, your arm will be higher, action will be slightly higher. And then the ball comes out slower naturally. And he said that would be a better option for me to change my pace. That's something that I tried to do, but I think at the time I got really confused, with the British media saying about variation. I wasn't too sure what to do, and I remember speaking even to my family about this, and they go, look, you really need to speak to someone who's played the game at the highest level, who you can talk to. And at the time, I didn't really have anyone, to talk about these kind of things. What's going on through my mind when the media are scrutinizing me, or when there's certain conditions or players I couldn't get out. And I wish at that time I just could get the phone or just drive up to Essex and knock on your door, Nas, and say, look, mate, I just need to have a bit of a chat. Can we just go and have a coffee at Starbucks and just and just talk about what's going through my mind and be that mentor through my international career.
Are you making a note of this, Are you making a note of all this, please?
I would have loved it if just let me be there the day you knock on Nasser's door and you cold call him and say, let's go for Starbucks. I think, make sure you've got your wallet, Monty, let me tell you. But going on and stuff like that, we sort of having a laugh and a joke, but the fielding stuff, it was very funny. As much you sort of feel, there's nothing worse in cricket than dropping catches. Were you able to laugh along with this? Or do you like everyone? Are you just like, oh my life? This just feels, just dig a hole and put me in it, because there's no worse feeling in the game than this.
Yeah, there were times when, I wanted to be taken cricket, a serious cricketer, with my catching and everything. And it really, there was times when we, like this, for this example, two for, over 280 runs, a crucial moment, should have taken the wicket, and then I'm dropping them. So that's what's really, frustrated me. And I think it frustrated Duncan Fletcher as well, because it was great, when we're doing well and I'm dropping catches, but when it's a vital catch and we need Monty to take them catches, that did frustrate the camp. And I'm sure at times, I don't know, if it'd be interesting to know from you, Nas, when listening from the Sky Comp, thinking, it's a vital moment we could do with the wicket, and then a catch comes to me and you think, he should be taking these catches. If you was a captain, right, and under me and you was on the field, how would you feel when I drop these catches and, let's say, Australia were 202?
I would have probably reacted in a slightly different way than I am right now, all this calm. But I do think there was a slight issue there, Mon, in all honesty, with the fielding, with the batting. And this is what I really want to get into at some stage during this show, is that you went from someone who loved the game. We all loved having you, watching you, that pure joy and natural instinct of yours. And I didn't enjoy that bit of your career, I'll be perfectly honest. That where you became the sort of, the comedy figure, and people used to take the mick out of you a little bit, and people used to take the mick out of your fielding. I remember the batting display at Cardiff. You could argue you won us an Ashes series with the bat. So I personally, and I know I can say this now from a distance, and I might have reacted different as a captain, but I liked what you did for England, whether it be with the bat or with the ball. And I didn't like the sort of comedy Mickey taking of Monty Panesar, the fielder, because I saw you day in, day out, A, practice your batting, and B, practice your fielding. So it wasn't like you weren't working at it. And on this day, that practicing of batting came to the fore, mate. It was a great evening.
Yeah, that was a great moment for us, me and Jimmy together. And I actually remember Andy Flower said, to have some batting buddies, because the tail used to get, we used to just lose so many wickets and get bowled very cheaply. And so he wanted the tail to sort of wag a little bit. And we used to have batting buddies. Paul Collingwood was my batting buddy. And I remember him said, make sure your back lift is short against the quick bowlers. And Andy said, if it's stumps, protect the ball, protect your stumps, play nice and straight. And then Jimmy said, if it's short, just drop the hands. I don't care if it hits you. He goes, just stick to that, and hopefully we got a chance. So that was a great moment with Jimmy, and a great moment for us in English cricket.
Do you remember, go back, put yourself, you're in the middle, you're just trying to block out and save a test match for England against Australia. Can you remember any of what anyone said to you around the bat? Ricky Ponting, did anyone have a word to you during that inning?
No, I was really surprised. People say that Ricky Ponting's this competitive guy. He's really in your face, and he's quiet as a mouse. Didn't say a word to me, and I was surprised. Yeah, I was really surprised. The Australian team was so quiet. It kind of felt like we're not going to get these guys out, and this is going to be a drawn test match, and that's what when you storm, the great Australians playing against England. I didn't have any sledging stories on that day, unfortunately, to share, but it was just, it was surprising to see the likes of Ricky Ponting, being a great competitor. He didn't really say anything to me.
What about when you walked into the dressing room, people like Freddie and the senior players around, how did they greet you?
Well, everyone was silent. I remember everyone sitting on their chairs. We couldn't hear. We could hear a pin drop, and then Andrew Strauss goes, "How did we escape that? How did we manage to escape that? We're supposed to lose that test match." And it was just a huge shock to everyone. But it was a great relief because next test match, Freddie, famous for his celebrations and that famous 5 wickets he took. So that was brilliant to see.
Let's talk about some of the perils of international cricket. Now, for people sitting at home, Nasser, they might just think, what do you mean the perils? This is living the dream. This is what every kid who plays cricket, this is their goal. This is what they want to do. And you were lucky enough to do it as a captain. But is that right? Is it always the dream? Is it always the fairy tale?
It starts like that, Rob, definitely. And for some, it continues throughout their career. I think we had Joe Root on recently, just before his 100th test match. And he said what he tries to remind himself of every time he plays the game is how he felt when he first played that very first test match. And you're also spot on. Virtually every single person out there will see international cricketers on their screen and think, what a life, isn't it great? I have to sit on the Greater Anglia from Chelmsford to Liverpool Street at 6 a.m, come home at 7 p.m. at night. Wouldn't it be great to be playing international cricket? As Monty said about playing against Sachin Tendulkar, being on the same field as Sachin Tendulkar, I was on the same field as Vivian Richards. So you're almost pinching yourself and you're thinking of it just as a bonus. You're just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm here on the same cricket field as Viv Richards. I'm living the dream. The problem is when that dream becomes reality and then you are desperate to continue and you're desperate to do well and you have the ups and the downs, that's when it becomes a bit of a challenge and that's when the dark days appear.
See, Monty, we showed your debut when you get Sachin Tendulkar out. So you think from then, everyone, when they play Test cricket in particular, it's like you just want to prove to everyone you can do it. You did that straight away by getting Sachin out. Rahul Dravid, you showed that you could play. So at that point, you must feel this is an easy game.
Yeah, on helpful pitches, I found cricket, extremely easy because I had a good stock delivery and I knew that I was able to put opposition under pressure. So I kept on just bowling, the same ball over again, maybe possibly change a bit of the field. The natural variation, comes into play. So, all of these other sort of question marks when on a flatter pitch, where I get kind of exposed, and I did, where I just kept on bowling the same delivery and didn't really change anything. Is where then I got found out as a cricketer. So yeah, on helpful pitches, on subcontinent, tours, I always found that I was in the game and I was very much, at my best.
When does it start to change for you mentally, Monty? When does that sort of natural love of the game, when does it become hard work? When do you think people are looking at me, people are critical of me? Can you remember a specific time where you thought cricket's not what I thought it was?
I think it started when Shane Warne said that comment of, playing he's playing, same test match 33 times. I don't think the British media or anyone would have, scrutinized me in that way. So I think that comment obviously wasn't helpful because it didn't really help my career, and everyone started to question about, does he vary the ball? Is he just bowling the same way? And I guess after that, I even started, taking sort of pressure on myself. After I bowl a few, good deliveries, I need to bowl the slower one now. Am I changing the field? And completely being distracted into an area which I didn't need to be. And I remember Jeffrey Boycott telling me, he goes, Monty, I've got one piece of advice for you, mate. The second word is off, and the second one and the first one you can work out. Just tell everyone that, because you are a natural cricketer, you're a natural bowler, and just bowl the way you want to bowl.
Monty, though, look at that comment then from Shane Warne, which is obviously quite a poignant moment in your career. Did it hurt because you felt there was an element of truth in it, or was it just that you thought it was unfair and not the right thing?
No, I was hurt by the comment because I thought, spinners are from the same cloth. They kind of help each other out. And I'm thinking, why is Shane Warne publicly saying this kind of comment? And then, the media are coming at me about my variation, which is actually, I was perfectly fine. It was just taking me into a different path when I didn't need to be. But I don't think Shane Warne himself, I don't think he knew that comment would have such an impact. It's like, the British media, they kind of took his word as he's the messiah of cricket, and they just kept on, honing that down at any different point. He's not varying it. He's got university field settings. He doesn't think for himself. He doesn't know what he's doing. But then I think it's your natural instincts, something maybe I wasn't good at explaining, but there were times I'll get a wicket. I remember, many times where, I'll get a batsman out because I knew he's coming down the wicket, or I think I need to bowl a bit slower. But it's something maybe I found it difficult to talk about and to, put into words. Because the jump, university students straight into, the world of international cricket, that huge jump came really quick for me. And, there were times where I couldn't explain to the coaches. I was like, what's your process? I was like, I don't really know what my process is because I don't have one. I don't understand what does the word process mean? I don't know. I just pick up a ball and turn it. And that's how simple cricket was in my mind. And that's why Michael Vaughan just said to me, look, Monty, here's the ball. Just turn it as much as you can. I'll try and set the field. And that's why he got the best out of me, because I wasn't good at explaining to coaches, what's going in my mind. I just wanted to turn the ball, and that was it.
Nasser, then, this is an interesting point. Nowadays, all right, you can argue of the different eras and stuff like that, who faced the better bowlers, which was the tougher era to play in. But one thing I don't think any of us can deny is this era that everyone's playing in now of social media, where everyone's got a view. So you have that comment that Shane Warne made about Monty has an effect on him. How do people then nowadays, young kids in particular, avoid that with all the social media and the constant feedback, a lot of it unwanted, they're getting?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. And this was my point I was trying to make, is when you play your first test match and your question about everyone out there must love to be an international cricketer, this is the sort of stuff you don't factor in. This is the sort of stuff you don't get when you're playing for Clay Hall and Ilford and Essex Second 11 and Essex. I played for England, and my very first test match, I got out for 13 and I was walking through the lobby at the hotel in Jamaica, and Jeffrey Boycott again shouted at me, "You won't get any runs with an open bat face, Hussain." And I didn't even know I had an open bat face. So in the same way, I know you're very close with Zach. Zach Crawley played in that game at Cape Town, got out first innings, mug me, says he's got a bit of a closed bat face. He's looking at the replay of me saying that up in the dressing room. Joe Root saying to him, "Don't look at that, don't listen to that." And Zach has gone on, he's not listened to all us mugs, going on TV about him. He's just done it his own way. And that's the hardest bit, I'd say, about an international cricketer at the moment is all the input. People are doing their job. Shane Warne was doing his job as a pundit to say what he said about Monty. And it's up to Monty and people that manage Monty and people around Monty to either say, listen, and go and speak to Shane, sit down with him, or completely blank it. You can't let the media affect your performance unless you want to, unless you're willing to learn from certain individuals in the media.
It's interesting, actually, on Zach, because I spoke to him. He's been injured, hadn't he, before this test match. And he was able to pick up a bat in the last test match and start doing some work. And I was just talking to him and said, what do you reckon? And he, no input from me whatsoever. This sort of sums him up a bit, which is what I like about him. He just sort of said, you know what? In the Sri Lanka test series, I started going into my shell. And everything that I practice and everything that I work on in the nets, I didn't do any of it. So what is the point in me practicing if I'm not going to then go out and play that way in a game? And I just sat there and thought, you know what? It's so simple when you look at it like that. But Monty, how would you tell yourself? Because these things were always going to be coming at people now. Whatever you do, whether you work in an office, someone's going to have a view on what you do. It's obviously much more in the spotlight being an international sportsman. How would you do things differently? How would you not let the Shane Warne comment affect you?
Well, see, it's a style of coaching. So I'll give you an example. Now, when I was with Duncan Fletcher, he was very much an observer. He would hardly ever speak to me. Maybe the first couple of days, I wouldn't even know, like, if he's watching my bowling. And I look behind me and there he is. He's watching my bowling. He's watching every ball. And then I remember him, I asked him, I said, how comes, what do you think of my bowling? He goes, I am watching your bowling and I will, give you the right piece of information when I think it's easier to tell you. And he also said to me, he goes, Monty, remember one thing is it's easier for me to destroy a player than make him better. So that's why I don't tend to say too much. So that was very much a hands-off type of coach, which I was so used to early on in my career, took loads of wickets. Then I had Peter Moores, who was very much, part of their sort of, coaching courses that they've done. And he was speaking from a coaching lens perspective, And he kind of asked me a lot of questions, in my space about my processes. I didn't understand, how to work with Peter Moores, even though he's such a great coach. It's like, what an amazing coach. He's getting the best out of everyone else, but I can't seem to work. But it was me, it was my lack of communication, my lack of skills of knowing how to, work with coaches. Other players were doing it. Cookie, Jimmy, who were in the similar boat under Duncan, they were able to work with Peter Moores. Why couldn't I do it? And it was because I was so used to Duncan Fletcher style, I needed to adapt. And that's the challenge for players. They need to adapt to the coaching style of the coach as well. It's not about the social media scrutiny. It's also what style of Marcus Trescothick's been appointed the batting coach. What is his style of coaching when it comes to batting? So if Zach wants to be successful, maybe speak to other people, about Marcus Trescothick, how to work with him. And that's what players should do. They need to work out, how can I work best with that coach?
Monty, I also remember you from the start, as I said earlier, when you had this life, this sort of, you look in your eyes, they were sort of bouncing out of your face almost. And you had so much enthusiasm and energy, especially for the game. And then I remember seeing you towards the end of your career, and it was the complete opposite. As it often is with players who are very up, they get to very down points as well, certainly emotionally. Is that a fair reflection of you by the end?
Yeah, I would say that. I think I fell out of love with the game. There were times where, umpires' decision wouldn't go my way. I thought the umpires were against me, or fielders dropping catches. I thought they were purposely doing it. Fans were trying to, laugh at me. And I was this lonely guy at fine leg where the whole game was against me. That's how I felt. And there were times where people said to me, Monty's gone off the rails. He's like a walking fireball. Let's not go near him. If we go near him, we'll get our hands burnt. When he calms down, maybe it's okay. And there was a time where I remember Neil Burns, he said to me, look, Monty, you need to speak about this to the media. And I spoke to, obviously, Mike Atherton, and I was scared. I was like, I don't know how the article's going to come out. And I've never spoken about, I was in denial. I remember the PCA sending this book on, strong sort of, athletes, strong-minded individuals who think, that speaking about mental health is a weakness. It's actually a huge vulnerability. You should speak about it. And I had that book. I just threw it in the bin. I said, no, I don't need to read this. I'll get through it and I'll find a way. But I wasn't well, I wasn't well at all. And so then when Mike Atherton wrote that piece, I was very, didn't know how it was going to come out, but he wrote a brilliant article. And I remember speaking to Peter Such when the next day when I had my session with him, he goes, mate, that was a really good article. And at least we are getting a better understanding where you're at, because you need to speak about it. You need to speak openly about it in the media so everyone can understand. So then that's what I try to do then.
Monty, what we've got to be careful of, though, is, not conflicting the two things. There are people who get a little bit depressed, and there's people who suffer from depression. I think all the time we play cricket, you're not getting runs, you're in a hotel for a long period of time, you're away from your family. There's periods where you're feeling a bit down and depressed, and there's actually the illness of depression. When did it switch from one to the other for you?
I think for me, it was I feel like there were times where I got slightly depressed, maybe when I wasn't taking the wickets. So, the strike rate of like 60 going to, let's say, 90, taking me 10 overs to 15 overs, to bowl. And then it was not talking, I should have talked to someone in that England camp where I wasn't feeling good straight away about my emotions, about my thoughts. Who was that best mate? Who was that guy I could lean to, what I'm thinking about right now? And I think, Matt Pryor was really good for me, even though he would say to me, Monty, every ball's a statement. At mid-on, I had to throw the ball in. And after a while, I got really irritated. But it was good. He was good to keep me in the game and concentrate. I should have done that. I should have just gone up and said, I played under 19s cricket with him. Wicket keeper, a spinner has a close relationship. Knock on his door and just say, look, Matt, I just feel really under pressure about my game. Have the emotional conversations, have them sort of conversations about what's going through you mentally. Have a mate that you can lean on. And I just never did that. I felt like, even though we're like a cricket family when we're on tour, you are like a family. I just didn't have that sort of person I could just go and speak about my feelings and my thoughts. It's not just about cricket. It's about, we're human after all, and we need someone to lean on, when it gets a bit tough on tour.
So, Monty, then, if I'm understanding it right, then, so is it almost then the performance goes, the confidence goes, and then it just gets more and more, and it starts just filling up, that sort of cup just overflows with all the emotion, all the negativity that starts off pretty much, though, from the performance.
Yeah, very much so. So it's like, a great example could be like you can have a glass of water with, nice, full, clean water. Suddenly parts of it, 10% gets a bit dirty. You deny it. You say, no, nothing's wrong with me. I'm not going to speak about that. I'm not going to clean that. Clean that by means talking to someone. Go and talk to your teammate about it. Whatever's on your mind. No, it's fine. We cricketers are machos. Nothing wrong with me. I'm a match winner. I'm going to win these games. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to fight this out. This kind of mentality that we have, as cricketers. Then it gets a bit more. Then it gets a bit more. Suddenly, what happens, it's more than that. It's more than 50, 60, 70, 80%. You're finding it difficult to, who do I go and speak to? And then it comes to a point when people who care for you, they say, look, the whole cricketing world, and especially in England, they just think Monty has gone off the rails. What is wrong with Monty? He used to love cricket. And that's that time, obviously, before then, I speaking to professional people, but in the media, I had to speak about it. And that was that moment, with Mike Atherton, I thought, I need to tell the world of cricket, this is what's going on.
What can you do? I always think, as cricket coaches, I was a captain for 9 years. I always feel, I can try and help people on how they perform better, how they might score some more runs, what they need to do to be a good professional cricketer. But there becomes a point where you're not qualified and you're completely out of your depth as just a cricket captain to help some people. But what can people like that do? What can captains, coaches do when you see someone who's getting into that dark place?
Well, I think for me at Essex, Paul Grayson was brilliant. PG, he said to me, look, Monty, I know, in the dressing room, people are thinking you're a bit of a bad egg in the dressing room. And I don't want that. I don't want people to think about you like that. I signed you. I think you're a good spinner. But at times I do think, you could do with a bit of help. Just go and speak to a sports psychologist, have a chat with them. And then, he kind of helped me to go there and speak to them and addressed it in a way where I understood that actually I'm not good for the dressing room. So let me go and do that, go back to PG. And then he would say to me, yeah, right, he'll get me back into the squad. So I thought that was good management from him. But then there was that moment, against Glamorgan, home match, James Foster, the captain. I was, wasn't sleeping very well. And then suddenly I've overslept and I got to the ground at 10:30 and that was it. James Foster said, no, you're not playing this game. And now that was it. I didn't play after that for, I played, I think, in August after that. And that was it. I didn't play after that for Essex in my last year of my contract. And, Fozzie I think he had enough. And I think at that time, I probably wasn't very well. I wasn't sleeping well and things weren't great with me. But again, when people just sort of make the decision, that's it, you can't do anything about it. That's cricket for you. And I wish I just could have opened up and knew how to, talk about what's going on. I didn't know myself, and then eventually, my contract ran out and then, had that time to, to get better. And now obviously, I'm back fully fit, mentally and physically.
So that's been obviously a pretty long road at times. But now, though, you feel that you're through all of that, life's moving on?
Yeah, much better now. I'm obviously, studying a master's in international sports journalism at St. Mary's University. And my goal is, to have that moment that I had with Sachin is to have with Nasser Hussain on Sky Sports, be that spin expert, be that commentator and commentate with Nasser Hussain. What a great delivery by Jimmy Anderson. And he has beaten Shane Warne's record. What a lovely way to do it by bowling Steve Smith, middle stump out of the ground.
Monty, that is absolutely fantastic. I thought you were going to do the cutaway for 4 and all that, but that was even better. Monty, thank you so much. It's been a privilege to have you on.
Sky Sports Cricket. Feel it all.